L'chaim. My friends, it's good to be back. For another week, we typically study the Tanya. I have something to say on that towards the end of the class. But it also happens to be a very special night tonight on the calendar. And I like to, when there's a special night, just to take a few minutes to discuss it. And what is special about tonight? It's the 22nd of Shvat. The 22nd of Shvat is the anniversary of passing of the Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Tanya Mushka Schneerson. She was the daughter of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe married her and came into the dynasty to be the 7th Rebbe. The truth is, he's also a great-grandson of the 3rd Rebbe from a different way. If I had my Rebbe map, I would show you. I don't know where that is. Oh no, it's right here. Here it is.
There we go.
This is our Rebbe map. So here you can see, this is, right? That's the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. His son, and the one who wrote the book that we're studying, Tanya, yeah? That's his son, the Mittler Rebbe. And then the next Rebbe was his son-in-law, the Mittler Rebbe's daughter's husband. But he's also the Alter Rebbe's grandson, because essentially he married his first cousin. You understand? So he's the grandson of this one, but the son-in-law of this one, so he became the 3rd Rebbe. He had many sons. His youngest son became the next Rebbe. But his oldest son had a son who had a son who had a son who had a son who was the Rebbe's father. The Rebbe married his 4th cousin. So he does come from the dynasty already of the Schneersons, which is why his last name was Schneerson. But he married the daughter of the 6th Rebbe, Rebbe Tanya Mushka, and that's the story. Now, on the 22nd of Shvat, his wife passed away. Wife close to 60 years. Of course, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin never had children, and his wife was everything to him. We only came to know this after she passed. Very, very, very few people were privileged to meet her. She was an extremely private person, and while married to the most public figure, no doubt.
So she was unable to have children? Is that the deal? Or
yeah.
nobody knows? Right.
The bottom line is they didn't have children.
Right.
It's not known to us exactly why or how it happened.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
So she sort of opted out of the Rebbetzin role, the traditional Rebbetzin role?
Well, there was no traditional necessarily Rebbetzin role in the context of leadership, but she was completely out of the limelight. She never attended the Rebbe's Farbrengens in person. Yeah. She never attended any of the prayers. She was at home. And of course, she lived her life. You know, the Rebbe's secretaries were always there to assist her. She would go shopping in Manhattan, different things. She had a lot of different things going on. People would come to visit her constantly, but only very few privileged people. And after she passed, these people became a treasure trove of stories because they had intimate encounters that nobody ever even knew about. And the Rebbe's emotion with which he reacted to her passing was, for many Hasidim, a shock. My relatives tell me that some of them didn't even think the Rebbe had a wife. Like she was so private that they didn't even know about her. And the next thing they heard, she passed away. Of course, those in the know always knew, but I'm saying the point is that that's how extremely removed she was. And she really, we owe her a historic gratitude. She surrendered the exclusivity of her husband to the entire Jewish world. She understood why the generation needed the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she gave him up to the generation. And I don't think there can be any adequate thanks or gratitude for that. Even, if I want to speak physically for a moment, she was childless. In the context of family, you would think that a woman would make up for the lack in children with the company of her husband. And she chose
the Jewish tradition of shopping in Manhattan.
That part, yeah. But it's a very, very big thing. And she was, the way we have come to know from the stories that have been told, she was both a very down-to-earth, relatable, empathetic human being, and royalty at the same time. There was this wonderful nix that you would encounter when meeting her. One of the, I guess one of the more famous personalities who knew her is Rabbi Shmuel Lu. Rabbi Shmuel Lu is a Chabad emissary in London, and he was the last one whom the Rebbe officiated his wedding. In the 50s and 60s, Rebbe was officiating Chasidim's weddings. He was the last one, and he only got it because his father-in-law was very much close to the Rebbe. Anyway, before the wedding in the summer of 63, his father-in-law asked the Rebbe, could he invite the Rebbitzin to the wedding? He wanted to invite his wife to the wedding. So the Rebbe said, she's not going to come. She's a private person like that. But she would definitely appreciate the invitation. So make a visit with her, go over to her house before the wedding, to the house, and invite her. That's what he did. He set up a meeting with the Rebbitzin, and he brought along his daughter and this groom-to-be, Shmuel Lu, who was for the first time meeting the Rebbitzin, this very, didn't really know what to make of it, a young schnook coming into the Rebbe's house. And he describes how he went inside, and the Rebbitzin had everything, immaculately prepared. There was this white tablecloth on the table, and it was like festive for the bride and groom. And she had these tall crystal glasses with glass straws inside them, and punch on the table, like a red punch. And she asked the groom to please serve the punch, to everybody. And he started pouring it into one of the glasses, and then he didn't realize, but his hand going over the glass knocked into one of the straws. The straw knocked the glass tipped over, and there's punch all over the table. And he was ready to bury himself alive, and the Rebbitzin just screamed out. She's like, a siman bracha, a sign of blessing. Wonderful. Mazel tov, And his future father-in-law said that she was so happy that he was tempted to spill another glass. Like that's how much she was like that. And then she basically took this personal interest in their family, and then he would grow, as they got married and had children, he would bring his children to the Rebbitzin also, and she would always be testing them and asking them questions of what they're learning. And after he moved to London, at one point his daughter came to learn in Crown Heights. And she was in the high school. And just before, I think it was like maybe after the holidays of Tishrei, so Rabbi Lu himself was in town, and he visited the Rebbitzin, and he said, or maybe it was his father-in-law, who visited the Rebbitzin and said, my granddaughter is here all alone, no family, she's here for a year of high school, I'm concerned about her. And the Rebbitzin said, I'll maintain contact with her. I'll keep in touch with her. And anyway, he went back to London, and a couple of weeks go by, and no contact from the Rebbitzin at all to this girl. Nothing. So then, like 2-3 months later, he was in town again, and he went to the Rebbitzin house for a visit. And the Rebbitzin said, is there a number that I can use to reach your granddaughter? Because I tried calling the girls' school, and I said, hello, can I please speak to her name, Yenta Chayalu? And they said, excuse me, do not call pupils on the phone. Because she didn't say who she was. She wasn't going to pull rank or something. So she said, I'm sorry, the school rules, they don't let me onto the phone. And anyway, he gave her the private number of her apartment. So the next Friday, the Rebbitzin called the apartment. But she was out shopping for Shabbos, so her roommate answered the phone. So she answers the phone, and there's this nice woman on the line. And she says, is Miss Lu here? So she said, no, I'm sorry, she'll be back. She's out shopping. Can I take a message? So she says, just tell her that Mrs. Schneerson from President Street called. That was her way of identifying. In other words, completely, not the Rebbitzin, the big. And after she passed away, some people, there's an audio recording of this. Someone told the Rebbe, I've heard she was a wonderful woman. And the Rebbe said, in my opinion, it's underestimated. Nobody can know her true greatness, is what he said. And he ascribed to her tremendous things. In the whole story of the books, when Chabad was fighting for the library, she was deposed. As part of the legal proceedings, she had a deposition. And she said a very famous line. They asked her, who do the books belong to? And she said, the books belong to the Hasidim because my father belonged to the Hasidim. Basically encapsulating the concept of a Rebbe. He's not a private figure, he's a public figure, and therefore everything that he has is communal. And the judge actually quoted that line in his verdict, basing a lot of the verdict on that. And the Rebbe, after she passed, said that she has a great merit for having said that and having revealed this concept to the world. Her name, of course, is Chaya Mushka. That's why you see so many young Chaya Mushkas, Chabad young Chaya Mushkas running around, because that was her name. Chaya means life. Mushka means spice.
Really?
Yes, a spice. Musk. It comes from an Arabic word. Musk, today. Not Elon Musk, okay? Just the spice musk.
He has many wives.
Not getting into that. So the Rebbe said we have to have life with spice. That's the lesson. Not just to live. People live, we go through life. People always used to say, are you alive because you're alive? Or you're alive because you weren't hit by a truck yet? Many people are alive because they weren't hit by a truck yet. That's the definition of their life. We have to be alive in an active way, in a proactive way, in a spicy way. And that's the ideal way to live a Jewish life. So tonight is her, I believe it's 37th yahrzeit. So her neshama should have an ascent, as we always say, and tzaddikim, as they are intercessors on our behalf on high, should bring down blessings for everyone and everything. L'chaim. I'm going to take some liberty here. We've been learning for, I think, 45 weeks already. Much slower pace than last time. This is our second round of the Tanya. First round, we did chapter a week. It was fast-paced. We got through the whole thing in 3 years. And after that, we decided to go again for a slower round. More diving deep. Instead of doing a chapter a week, it's a page of the original Tanya every week. And I think we've done well. It's been a good journey. Where we finished last week was chapter 17. It's basically a third of the way through. It's like a stopping point. So we talked before about catching up. We're going to do a catch-up. We're going to do a recap to review what it is that we've been studying, where we're at, and where we're heading. And basically, the whole thing comes down to one story. And that's the story of the goat and the giraffe that I love. Anyone remember that story? The goat and the giraffe? All right. Bears repeating. So the giraffe is very tall, as we all know. And it befriended this goat one day. And they got to talking. And the goat, you remember this now?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm picturing a giraffe and a goat.
Okay.
They speak different languages. So
And the goat is being a goat. He's very short. And the giraffe is trying to broaden the goat's mind. Life is not everything that you see under you. There's a world out there. Trying to explain to him there's views and mountains, the plains, right? Trees, other animals. There's a whole universe. And the goat says, nah, don't bother me. I got my stuff together. He's like, no, you have to, listen. You have to stand up on your back legs and just take a look at this world. So he goes, nah, it's too much work. It's like, look, just use me as support. Jump up and you can see everything. Anyway, it took a whole bunch of convincing after weeks of trying. Finally, it came the day the goat's like, you know what, I'll do this for you. Goat, with the effort, jumps up, leans against the giraffe's back, and he's able to now see this new world. And the giraffe is like waiting for the reaction, because this is incredible. I mean, for the first time to see the landscape and the trees, the sky, the whole thing. And the goat's looking and he's not really impressed. So the giraffe says, what's going on? What's wrong? He goes, I can't eat it. That's what he says. I can't eat it. That's the metaphor. And what is the metaphor? What is the key to the metaphor? The key to the metaphor is that sometimes we get so boxed into the perspective in which we live that when somebody tries to open up our minds, we're so fixated on the narrative and the way that we've been thinking until now that we see it through the prism of our previous experiences, and we cannot allow ourselves to be opened up to a richer and more inspired way of life. It's like when in the 30s there was a city in Poland called Dvinsk. And Dvinsk had two rabbis. One was the Or Sameach. Today all the organizations, the Or Sameach organizations, they're named for him. But Meir Simcha HaKohen of Dvinsk, he was a tall man, he was a broad man, he was the Lithuanian community. There was a Hasidic community and a Lithuanian community. He was the rabbi of the Lithuanian community. And he was a very, very impressive person. In the same city, there was another rabbi called Rabbi Yosef Rosen, the Rogachover Gaon, the genius of Rogachover, one of the greatest minds of the last century. And he was a short man, small, very sharp. And he was the Hasidic rabbi. So what do Jews do when they meet in shul? They argue about their rabbis. So the Jews were having a discussion, which rabbi is greater? Now, I just gave away the story because I said it in English, but in Yiddish, the word for greater, gresser, also literally means bigger. So they were saying, which rabbi is gresser? Which rabbi is bigger in stature? So one was saying the Or Sameach is the greater one. The other one was saying the Rogachover is the greater one. They're having a big argument. Who's the greater rabbi? So there was a kid over there, and he says, I'm sorry, but I don't know why you're arguing. It's so obvious that the Or Sameach is gresser. He's the bigger guy. It's obvious that he's bigger. So the adult laughed at him, and he said, yeah, little boy, we're not talking about greatness in size. We're talking about greatness in stature. So the kid said, now you're just playing with words. See? The kid is so convinced that there's only one interpretation of greatness, or gresser, that anything else, you're playing with words. Every adult understands that if you measure a person's stature by his size, please, it's ridiculous. We have many big people that are not so impressive, and many small people that could and should and are leaders. The point being that many times when we have a paradigm shift that's introduced to us, we take it in stride with our own prior identity. And it doesn't allow for that quantum leap that has to happen in order to change our paradigm and start the new journey of our lives. And the Tanya asks us to do just that. The Tanya asks us to stop being a goat and stop being a child and to take things not from a primitive perspective, but from a mature and enriched perspective. And what is that mature, enriched perspective? It's many things. But primarily, it's concerned with the definition of man and his existential struggle. How do we define man and the battle that we call life? Because that's what we're all in. We're all in the battle of life. To different degrees, we're fighting different levels of battle. Some of us seem to have harsher battles, some of us seem to have lesser battles, but we're all fighting. And in order to have a proper approach to this fight, we have to be able to clearly articulate that which it is that we are and that which it is that we want to become. And to that end, the Alter Rebbe makes the case that you are not defined by what you do as much as you are defined by who you are. This is, if I could encapsulate, this is the operative principle, definitely of the first half of the Tanya. To change the mindset from it's not so much about what you're doing as to who you are. And what we mean by that is not to cheapen action. Of course, Judaism is a ritual-oriented religion. We're the only one, in fact, that has so much focus on the deeds and what you do and what you can't do and what you shouldn't do and what you should do. But that's not what makes a man. To put it in the Talmudic context, which the Alter Rebbe actually begins with, he says, we have in the Talmud, we have defined what's called the righteous, the wicked, and the in-between. We have the tzaddik, the rasha, and the benoni. And when you read the literal text, what you walk away with is that it's all percentage points. If you have more percent of check marks and good things that are accruing to your account, you're a tzaddik. If you have more X marks, things that are going against what you should be doing, then you're a rasha. And somehow, if you land up 50-50, then you're the average guy, the in-betweener. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it basically says, well, then the average guy is 50% sinning, which we don't want to believe in terms of a true relationship with Hashem. So, plus a whole bunch of other questions and reasons that the Alter Rebbe uses to prove his point. The Alter Rebbe asks us to rise another level. And he says, let's not talk about the bottom line. Let's talk about the makeup of your soul. There are 3 different types of soul makeups. This is the way it's wired. This is the way Hashem created it. And we have to place ourselves on that spectrum, and then from that perspective, pursue that which it is that we have to pursue. What are the 3 soul makeups? The 3 soul makeups are what we like to call in these classes the weak Jew, the inspired Jew, and the struggling Jew. What is the weak Jew? The weak Jew is the one who compromises, is the one who gives in, is the one who tries to fight but can't keep it going. And he falls. And according to the Alter Rebbe's definition, you're a weak Jew once you give in once. This is a very, very harsh and strict definition. But if you're weak once, you're in the category of a weak Jew. You can recover, you can bounce back and rise up a level, but acknowledge that in that moment of falling, one time, a compromise has been done to your soul. Let's go to the other side for a second. The inspired Jew is the Jew who's not struggling. These are very, very rare and far between. They come about once in a generation. They're called the tzaddik, but the real tzaddik. Not just the tzaddik that your mom called you. You're a tzaddik. We love you. The tzaddik is the person who's completely righteous. He has eradicated evil from his consciousness. There is no battle. Or let's say the battle, instead of being between bad and good, is between good and better. That's all he's got to battle. Fully in tune with the divine. Doesn't step out of it ever. It doesn't necessarily look exciting or on fire, because actually the most intense experiences are the ones experienced in calm. We think that when it's noisy, that's where it's beautiful. But if you know that story from Elijah in the Tanakh, what does it say? When Elijah wanted to see Hashem, Elijah the prophet, Hashem said, hide in the mountain, and you're going to have a series of experiences pass you by. First, there was a wind. Very, very powerful wind. And Eliyahu said, is this Hashem's presence? Hashem said, Lo baruach Hashem. Hashem is not in the wind. Then the massive fire came forth. And Eliyahu said, is this Hashem's presence? And Hashem said, Lo ba'esh Hashem. Hashem is not to be found in the fire. A big noise came by. And Hashem further said, Lo barash Hashem. God is not in the noise. And then after the noise came a stillness. Kol d'mama daka. The silent voice of quiet. And then Hashem said, that's where the presence of God is. The presence of God is not in the noise, in the fire, or in the wind. It's in the quiet. The greater the tzaddik, the less noisy his service of God is. The more you see people dancing up and down, jumping up and down during davening, let's say, that could be a tzaddik, but it's not the greatest. The stiller, the more devoted, the more in tune, the more at peace. This is the truth of a Jew who is fully connected with Hashem. But they don't battle, and we shouldn't even aspire to that. In the Tanya, we're taught not to aspire to become a tzaddik. Because you're either born with the potential or you're not. They're there to serve as a manifestation of godliness so we can find Hashem to be more real in our lives. But there's no ladder to climb from a regular struggling Jew to a tzaddik. There are tzaddik moments, we had in chapter 14 a little bit on that, but not to become one. In the middle, the struggling Jew, that's the Beinoni. According to the Tanya's definition, he doesn't have compromises. He doesn't have weak moments. He never gives in on the practical. But in the heart, it's flaming fire of passion and temptation like any of us would lust. It's the same exact experience on the inside as it is for him, as it is for us. That is the place we want to be. That's the life we want to live. The life that's never free of struggle, but also is free enough to be liberated from compromise. And then, from there, we measure down into the deeds and into how much it is and into which mitzvahs you're doing and all that good stuff. But the three categories are not defined by the deeds, but the soul makeup. And in that soul makeup, what becomes a very crucial point is that there's not one soul but two. These are classic ideas, but always need to be re-emphasized and rethought about and remeditated. We are a split personality. We should embrace it, not try to fix it. Jewish schizophrenia is a real thing. It is. When you embrace it, it solves a lot of the, reflective or personal imposter syndrome we might feel like sometimes. How do we go from a spiritual high to a spiritual low? How do we go from a great day to a bad day? How do we go from these highly positive and altruistic experiences to highly selfish and egotistical incidents in our lives? And the answer is that it's not coming from the same place. It's not the same you. It's two different parts of you. Two different parts of you means that you got two entities vying for control. The godly, what we call the godly soul, or we can just call it the God in you, the piece of God that's alive in your heart, wants to be aligned fully all the time. That's what's pushing for the positivity, for the courage, for the selflessness, for the truth. The animal soul is the animal in you. The animal that wants to just descend, as Kohelet, King Solomon says in Kohelet, Ruach HaBehema yoredet hi lemata. The spirit of the animal descends. Like the goat, it wants to just look down. It walks on four, it doesn't see anything bigger than itself, and so long as it's preserving itself and gratifying itself, that's all we need. This is where the bad days come from. This is where the negative experiences come from. This is where the downer, depression, all this stuff, that's where that comes from. It builds up from the animal soul. And when we talk about weakness, struggling, and inspiration, we're talking about it in the frame of reference of these two souls. The tzaddik doesn't have a second soul, or he has it, but he's harnessed it or transformed it to be a force for good. We each have those mini moments, and when we go through a dark period, and we come out of it not just okay, and not just stronger, but our darkness becomes the catalyst for growth. These are transformative moments. I was talking with somebody. I'm sure you've all seen it, but the hostage that came out last week, Agam, she was keeping Shabbat in captivity, and she didn't know, but at the same time that she made the decision to keep Shabbat, her parents made the decision to keep Shabbat while she was being held hostage. And they actually said in an interview that they didn't think that when she came out, she was going to recognize them because they got so religious, Little did they know that she also began to keep Shabbat. And
Well, she wasn't before she was taken out?
yeah, she was not religious at all.
Wow.
And the captivity inspired that in her. So much so, in fact, that the mom, when she was going to be freed, because all the deals were happening on Shabbat. Right? Did you see that? she asked, she said, do not desecrate Shabbat for us. When my daughter comes, please don't take pictures. Please don't, none of the journalism wanted to be a private moment, not just because of the privacy of the moment, but because of sanctity of Shabbat. We don't want it to be violated. And in the end, she wasn't even released on Shabbat. There was a mix-up and a hold-up, and she came out on Sunday. And she herself commented, she said, that's the way I chose to live. Hashem arranged it that there wouldn't have to be extra desecration of Shabbat on my behalf because of this new commitment. But these are crazy things. How the darkness, how do they do it in Israel? They're the most resilient people. Dealing with a war, dealing with murder, dealing with all this incredible, horrific pain. And there's weddings. And there's joy. I believe it's because it comes from the inside. We don't let circumstance dictate the way we feel and the way we operate. We begin with something bigger than ourselves. Judaism is entrenched in eternity, and when you're entrenched in eternity, nothing can shake you. Somehow we just stay the course. It's like the previous Rebbe said when he was jailed in Russia in 1927. One of the interrogators was trying to get some information out of him and he wouldn't give it. And the interrogator took out a gun, put it on the table, and he said, "This toy has made many people talk." And without flinching, the previous Rebbe said, "This toy only scares people who have many gods and one world. I have one God and two worlds. This toy doesn't scare me." The message being, I'm living in a higher plane. You think that these things move me, they don't. And the Jews are the same way. We're eternal in that way. And that's why we can come out of the lowest places with the highest level of resilience. But anyway, the point as it relates to here is that you could bounce back. But in the darkness, in the stepping down, that momentary failure is coming from the animal inside of us. And it's our job to observe the battle that happens between the godly and the animal and to make the godly win. Because there's no two-state solution. That's not how it works. There's no compromise available. It's not a 50-50 thing. It's not a, you take Sunday, I'll take Monday. This is an all or nothing battle. Your godly soul wants exclusive control of your body. Your animal soul wants exclusive control of your body and of your life. And if you're 99% in, you're 100% out. The goal of the struggle is to stay 100% in. How do we do that? What are the basic tools we have at our disposal to stay in the lane and on top of the struggle? Essentially what it comes down to in the Tanya here is the mind and prayer. That's what it comes down to. And it's actually being discovered more and more. Today you hear this, people saying it all the time, it's all in the mind. What are they saying when they say it's all in the mind? It really is all in the mind. Your perspective on something, your interpretation of it, the meditation you allow yourself to engage in is the key to your success. It's so stifled today with TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff. It's just calling for the numbness of our brain. Literally doesn't allow us to function as normal human beings. What happened to just sitting on a bench and thinking? Where has this culture gone? But if we can keep it in some way or another, we have success, because it is all in the mind. It is in the power of study, meditation, and allowing that to filter into your emotions and your actions. And prayer becomes a super important part of the whole equation. Prayer is it's the orientation. It's the time we center ourselves. Prayer means different things to different people. Many people will say prayer is a time for requesting things. Prayer is a time for meeting Hashem. But at its core, what prayer is supposed to be is like the literal word in Hebrew suggests. The word for prayer in Hebrew is tefillah. And the word tefillah means connection, bonding, attachment. That's what it is. Tefillah is supposed to be an experience of attachment to your Creator. You're supposed to actively remove all distractions before you pray. Actively. You're supposed to actively meditate on God before you pray. You're supposed to enter the experience of prayer with intention. Because if done right, it gives you everything you need for the day. It puts you in the zone. It fires you up. It's that juice. Every man needs juice to fight. We get juice from our fellow men, but we also get juice from the spiritual exercises that we do on a daily basis. And if those spiritual exercises become robotic, how sad is that?
But it's still better to do it.
Yeah, still better to do it. That's later in the Tanya, though. Later in the Tanya, it talks about the value of deed, even with no feeling. Now he's...
Sometimes it's,
Huh?
you know.
Yeah, of
You
course.
can't always control
Of course. In the end of the day,
how
look,
your engagement.
in the end of the day, it's Hashem's mitzvah. It's a pretty revolutionary idea, but in the end of the day, it's not our mitzvah, it's Hashem's mitzvah. That means that in the end of the day, we put on tefillin because that's what Hashem wants us to do. And if we feel good about it and if it brings meaning to us, then fantastic. But in the end of the day, you got to do it.
But in the morning.
In the morning.
You confuse me with the end of the day thing.
Ha ha ha. In the beginning of the day, okay? In the beginning of the day, you got to put on tefillin.
Tomorrow could be right before sundown, too.
Well, according to halacha, it could be all day, technically. But you don't want to be caught by the seat of your pants, doing these things. Yeah. You have to be in tune. The heart matters. And when the heart is alive, the actions will be focused as well. And that is the secret to Judaism being real. On Moshe Rabbeinu's last day, or days on earth, he said to the Jewish people, you should know that the Torah and its mitzvahs are close to you. So close means what? Obviously it's not a physical concept because we're not talking about a physical thing. It's Torah and mitzvahs we're talking about over here. Close means in reach. Close means accessible. It's accessible for every single Jew to do everything that he needs to do. But most importantly, it's close in relevance. It's close in being real. It's close in being meaningful. It's close in being just exactly what you're capable of achieving. It's not beyond. And it's not something that's archaic. It's right here. If you will only train your mind to be aligned with that. If you will only engage in the exercises needed to get there. And that's the story. What if you can't? And there's more of the Tanya. What if you're not motivated? And there's more of the Tanya. What if you're feeling numb? What if the battle's overpowering you? The waves are too strong. Okay, these are all individualized circumstances. I think the first 17 chapters of the Tanya are the idealized approach. The giraffe lifting the goat and saying, stop trying to eat everything. You're allowed to just appreciate things. And that's our calling too. What are we eating that we have to start appreciating? What are we devaluing in a sense that we have to begin to value? And when we do, everything is richer. When we do, Judaism is more alive. Judaism is more real. Judaism is more fun, quite literally, because it has the spirit, it has the proper spirit that it's supposed to have. So, taking that, let's say a l'chaim to an increased awareness of the innate giraffe that we have, the perspective that we have. Because our soul is a giraffe, or our animal soul is a goat, or a cow maybe sometimes, or a raging bull. The godly soul is just a nice, gentle giraffe that wants to introduce you to the truths that are way beyond what our limited human mind can grasp. And with that, we rise and become the Jews that we're supposed to be. L'chaim.